All right, everybody, welcome back. Ready for another deep dive.
Always ready.
Awesome. So today we are going to be taking a look at Spiritism.
Oh, very cool.
Yeah, and we are going to be using the Spiritist Principles document from the U.S. Spiritist Federation as kind of our guide here.
Sounds good.
Yeah, and before we get too far into the weeds here, I just want to kind of point out, when most people think of Spiritism, they probably think of like, Ouija boards and seances and that kind of spooky stuff.
Right.
But that's not really what we're talking about here today. This is, more about the philosophical and ethical side of things.
Yeah, kind of a way of life.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's all about like understanding who we are, where we came from, where we're going.
Right, yeah. Like a lot of big questions.
Big questions.
Right.
So, so this document, like I said, it's called the Spiritist Principles.
Mm-hmm.
And it basically lays out like the 12 core beliefs of Spiritism.
Okay.
And it all kind of stems from this this speech that was given by Allan Kardec back in 1868.
Oh, wow. So quite a while ago.
Yeah, back in the day. And it was a time when, science was making all these crazy discoveries, like, evolution was a really hot topic.
Sure.
And so, people were kind of struggling to reconcile their faith with all this new scientific knowledge.
Right.
And so Spiritism kind of emerged as like a way to bridge that gap between, science and religion.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is that, even though it's been around for a while, these principles are still relevant today.
Yeah. It's pretty amazing how they hold up over time.
Yeah. So, so let's jump into these principles, shall we?
Yeah, let's do it.
So principle number 1 is the belief in God.
Okay.
So right off the bat, we're talking about like a higher power.
Sure.
But it's not just any God.
Right.
Spiritism emphasizes that this God is all-powerful, just, and good.
So not a vengeful God.
Right. It's about understanding that there's this ultimate source of goodness and justice guiding everything.
Okay.
And that's kind of like the foundation for everything else that follows.
Gotcha.
So how about we move on to principle number 2,
Okay.
which is the existence of spirits. So basically the idea that our souls, our spirits, exist independently of our physical bodies.
Okay, so kind of like mind and body being a separate things.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that our spirits are like eternal. They exist before we're born and they continue to exist after we die.
Makes sense.
Yeah. And what's interesting is that this principle kind of ties in with principle number 3.
Okay, how so?
Well, principle number 3 is the pre-existence of the soul.
Pre-existence.
Yeah, so basically like we're not just born with a clean slate. We come into this life carrying experiences and lessons from our past lives.
Oh, wow. So kind of like building on who we were before.
Exactly.
Interesting.
Yeah, and this is where things start to get really interesting because principle number 4 is reincarnation.
Oh, wow. So the idea of being reborn into new lives.
Exactly. And it's not about like, being punished or rewarded or anything like that. It's more about like, continuing our spiritual journey and learning and growing with each lifetime.
So each lifetime is like a chapter in a bigger book.
Yeah, a chance to kind of work through our imperfections and, gradually evolve towards becoming better versions of ourselves.
And hopefully each chapter gets a little bit better.
Well, yeah, that's the goal, right?
Yeah.
And principle number 5 actually talks about that. It says that the natural consequence of this progression, of this reincarnation cycle, is happiness.
Happiness.
Yeah. So it's not just about like, reaching some ultimate destination.
Right.
It's about the journey itself. It's about experiencing the joy that comes with learning and growing and becoming more enlightened with each lifetime.
So it's about the process of becoming better, not necessarily about reaching some perfect end state.
Exactly. That's a great way to put it.
Thanks.
All right, so we've talked about God, we've talked about spirits, we've talked about reincarnation. What's next?
Let's see. Principle number 6.
Okay, what's number 6?
It says that we are the ones who make our own happiness or unhappiness.
Interesting. So we have free will.
Yes, exactly. Principle number 6 is all about free will. It's the idea that we have the power to choose our actions and that those choices determine our happiness.
So like we're responsible for our own destinies.
Exactly. And that ties into principle number 7, which is divine or natural law.
Okay, so what does that mean?
Well, it means that there's a kind of universal law of cause and effect.
Okay.
That good actions lead to good consequences and bad actions lead to bad consequences.
So it's like karma.
It's very similar to the idea of karma, yes. It's about understanding that there's a natural balance to the universe.
Okay, so wait a minute. If we're responsible for our own happiness and there's this law of cause and effect, Does that mean we're like eternally punished for our mistakes?
That's a good question, and it leads us to principle number 8, which is atonement and reincarnation. It basically says that the duration of the consequences of our actions, whether good or bad, is not eternal.
Okay, so there's hope, even if we mess up.
Exactly. It's not about eternal damnation or anything like that. It's about understanding that we have the opportunity to learn and grow from our mistakes, and that eventually we can overcome the negative consequences of our actions through good deeds and positive choices.
So like a constant cycle of learning and growing and making amends for our past mistakes.
Exactly. It's about recognizing that we're all on a journey and that even when we stumble, we have the power to get back on track and continue moving forward.
That's pretty reassuring, actually.
I think so too. It gives us a sense of hope and agency in our own lives.
Okay, so we have this idea that our actions have consequences, but we also have free will to make choices. Where does that leave us?
Well, that brings us to principle number 9, which is the plurality of existences.
Plurality of existences, what does that mean?
It means that this earthly life is just one phase in a much larger journey of the soul.
Oh, okay, so it ties back into reincarnation.
Exactly. We experience multiple lifetimes, each one offering unique opportunities for learning and growth.
So it's like we're constantly evolving and progressing towards something greater.
Yes, exactly. It's a beautiful and empowering concept, don't you think?
I do, actually. Kind of makes you feel like even the tough times have a purpose.
I agree. And it gives us a sense of responsibility for our choices, knowing that they shape not only this life, but also future lifetimes.
All right, so we've talked about God, spirits, reincarnation, free will, the law of cause and effect, and the plurality of existences. What else is there?
Well, things are about to get a little spooky. Principle number 10 talks about the relationship between the material and spiritual worlds.
Okay, so this is where we start talking about ghosts and stuff.
Not necessarily ghosts in the traditional sense,
Okay.
but Spiritism does acknowledge that there's more to reality than what we can see and touch.
Okay, so there's like a spiritual realm that exists alongside our physical world.
Exactly. And these two realms are interconnected. They influence each other in ways that we may not always understand.
So it's not just about life and death. It's
Yeah.
about these two worlds coexisting and interacting with each other.
Precisely. And that leads us to principle number 11, which is the possibility of communication between the material and spiritual worlds.
Okay, so this is where we get into mediums and seances and all that.
Well, yes and no. Spiritism does believe that communication with spirits is possible, but it emphasizes that it should be approached with caution and discernment.
Okay, so not just messing around with Ouija boards.
Right. It's about understanding that these communications can be influenced by a variety of factors, and that it's important to be critical and responsible when exploring these phenomena.
So it's more about like, careful research and understanding than just trying to contact spirits for fun.
Exactly. And it's important to remember that not all spirits are benevolent.
Okay, so there can be negative entities out there too.
Right. Just like in the physical world, there are good and bad spirits in the spiritual realm.
That makes sense. So what's the last principle?
The 12th and final principle ties everything together. It emphasizes the importance of charity, morality, and love as the pathways to spiritual evolution.
Okay, so it's not just about believing in all these things. It's about putting them into practice.
Exactly. Spiritism teaches that true spirituality is about living a life of compassion, kindness, and generosity. It's about striving to be better people, not just for our own benefit, but for the benefit of all beings.
So it's about action, not just belief.
Exactly. It's about making the world a better place through our thoughts, words, and deeds.
This is all very interesting, but it does raise a question for me. Does Spiritism expect us to just accept all of these principles on faith?
Not at all. In fact, Spiritism encourages free examination and the use of reason. It urges us to question, explore, and think critically, never accepting anything blindly.
So it's not about blind faith. It's about finding truth through reason and evidence.
Precisely. Spiritism recognizes that true faith is based on understanding, not on blind acceptance. It encourages us to use our intellects to investigate the world around us, including the spiritual realm.
Okay, so there's room for science and reason within Spiritism.
Absolutely. In fact, Spiritism views science as a valuable tool for uncovering the laws of nature, which are seen as expressions of God's will.
So science and spirituality are not seen as contradictory, but as complementary.
Exactly. They both contribute to our understanding of the universe and our place within it.
Wow, this has been a really enlightening conversation. I feel like I have a much better understanding of Spiritism now.
Me too. It's a truly fascinating and multifaceted philosophy.
Yeah, and you know what's really striking to me is how optimistic and hopeful it is.
I agree. It offers a vision of life where even the most challenging experiences can be seen as opportunities for growth and progress.
And it emphasizes the interconnectedness of all things, reminding us that we're not alone in this journey.
Exactly. We're all part of something much bigger than ourselves.
And that's a really comforting thought, isn't it?
It is. It gives us a sense of purpose and meaning, knowing that our lives have a greater significance beyond this physical realm.
Well, this has been a truly fascinating deep dive into Spiritism.
It has.
And if you're interested in learning more, I encourage you to check out the U.S. Spiritist Federation. They have a wealth of resources available on their website. Thanks for joining us on this journey of exploration.
It's been a pleasure.
All right, till next time, folks, keep those minds open and keep exploring.
See ya.
Bye.